The gavel hadn't even landed yet, and my hands were already shaking under the table. Not from fear. From the grip, my own fingers digging into my wrist, hard enough to leave 4 white crescents, just to keep myself from standing up too soon. Across the room, my daughter leaned toward her lawyer and laughed. A short, sharp, ugly little laugh. The kind you don't teach yourself. The kind that comes out when you think you've already won. The judge looked up from the folder in front of him. His pen stopped moving. His face, I will never forget his face, went the color of old paper. He leaned toward his clerk, and I watched his lips move, quiet, almost private, like he was talking to himself. It's him. Nobody else in that courtroom understood what he meant. I did. My name is Eleanor Voss. I'm 61 years old, and 31 years ago, I started a commercial cleaning company out of the back of a 1994 Ford Aerostar with $400 and a mop bucket that didn't have wheels. By the time I was 55, Voss Facility Solutions had 11 contracts across 3 counties, 42 employees on payroll, and a valuation, according to the broker who came knocking 2 years ago, of $6.2 million. I built that #1 filthy office floor at a time. I built it through a divorce, through a bad hip that still aches when it rains, through raising a daughter alone on a schedule that started at 4:30 in the morning. That daughter is Madison. She's 34 now. And 2 years ago, when my doctor told me the word arrhythmia for the first time, I made the decision that would nearly cost me everything I'd spent my life building. I signed 60% of Voss Facility Solutions over to her. Not sold. Signed. A gift, on paper, worth roughly $3.7 million, because I trusted her, and because I was tired, and because a mother wants to believe that the child she raised will not become the person who destroys her. I was wrong about a lot of things. This is the story of how wrong, and what it cost to find out. It was a Tuesday in March when I first felt the floor tilt under me. I'd stopped by the downtown office to drop off a signed vendor contract, something I still did out of habit, even though Madison kept telling me I didn't need to hover anymore. The lights in the executive suite were dimmed low, the kind of low you use for a party, not a workday. There was a bottle of Veuve Clicquot sweating in a silver bucket on my old desk. My desk. Madison was wearing a cream silk blouse I didn't recognize, the kind that costs more than I used to pay myself in a week when I started the company. And she was laughing with a man I didn't recognize either, a man in a slate gray suit with a signet ring on his pinky finger, swirling champagne like he already owned the carpet under his shoes. To the transition, he said, raising his glass. To finally running this thing the right way, Madison said, and clinked. Neither of them saw me in the doorway. I stood there in my sensible flats and my quilted coat, holding a manila folder like an idiot, and I heard my daughter say, in a voice light as a party favor, "She'll sign whatever I put in front of her. She always does." I did not say a word. I put the folder on the reception desk, and I left. I went home, and I didn't sleep. At 2 a.m., I logged into the accounting portal I technically still had admin access to, because Madison, for all her scheming, had never once thought her mother knew how to read a general ledger better than she did. There it was. A $180,000 consulting retainer paid out over 4 months to a company called Belhaven Strategic Partners. I'd never heard of it. There was no invoice on file. Just a wire confirmation number and Madison's electronic signature. I asked her about it over coffee, playing it soft, playing it curious. "Sweetheart, what's Belhaven?" She didn't even blink. "Mom, it's a bridge financing structure. We're leveraging a consulting shell to optimize the tax treatment on the Riverside contract renewal. It's completely standard for a business at our valuation tier. You wouldn't have needed it back when we were smaller." She said it fast, smooth, full of words designed to make me feel too old to argue. I smiled and said that made sense. I pretended to believe her. Inside, I was already dialing my old friend Carol, who'd spent 22 years as a forensic accountant for the county. Carol called me back 4 days later, and her voice had the flat calm of someone delivering very bad news carefully. Belhaven Strategic Partners had one listed officer. His name was Derek Wren. Same Derek Wren currently listed as Madison's fiancé on a wedding registry site, a fact she had not mentioned to me in 11 months of dating him. The $180,000 hadn't gone to any tax structure. It had gone into a joint brokerage account opened 6 weeks after their first date. I came in early on a Thursday to catch the maintenance crew before the morning shift and heard Madison's voice through the break room door, not lowered at all, because she assumed the building was empty. Once the guardianship petition goes through, none of this is even a conversation anymore, she was saying. The heart thing gives us the medical basis. My lawyer says a judge will sign off on incompetency in under an hour if we frame the March incident right. Derek laughed. And the company just transfers. The company was never really hers to begin with, Madison said. She just held the door open long enough for me to walk through it. I stood in the hallway with my hand flat against the wall, and for the first time in this whole ordeal, I let myself feel exactly how much that sentence cost me. Then I straightened my coat, and I walked in and asked, brightly, if anyone wanted coffee. 2 weeks later, a certified letter arrived at my house. My daughter had filed a petition in probate court to have me declared legally incompetent, citing documented cardiac and cognitive concerns, with a request that she be named sole conservator of my remaining assets and full owner of Voss Facility Solutions. She hadn't just been stealing quietly. She'd built an entire legal machine to take the rest by force, and she'd built it assuming I would never see it coming, because in her mind, I was already halfway gone. So I gave her exactly what she was hoping to see. I started using my late husband's old cane, the one that had sat in the hall closet for 6 years. Even though my hip only complains, it doesn't collapse. I let my hands tremble a little when I signed for packages. I started repeating myself on purpose, asking the same question about dinner plans twice in one phone call, then laughing it off as one of those days. At Sunday dinners, I let my fork drift past my plate. I let silences sit a beat too long before I answered a question, like I was reaching for a word that wasn't there. Inside, I was sharper than I had been in years. I told myself, a wolf doesn't run from a trap it can see. It waits for the trap to think it's already won. Every soft, confused smile I gave Madison was a brick in the wall I was building around her. Let her believe the incompetency petition was writing itself. Let her get comfortable. Comfortable people get careless, and careless people leave fingerprints. I hired an elder law attorney named Priya Ramachandran under a false name for our first 2 meetings, paying her retainer in cash, because I did not yet know who on Madison's side might be watching my accounts. Together we built the bait, a fabricated estate simplification memo left deliberately in the top drawer of my home office desk, suggesting I was already drafting a new will that would leave the entire remaining 40% of the company, the piece Madison hadn't gotten to yet, directly to Derek's charitable foundation, out of gratitude for how well he'd cared for me. It was designed to detonate exactly one kind of person, a greedy one. I also asked my longtime office manager, Tom, a man who'd been with me for 19 years and whose loyalty Madison had never once bothered to secure, to quietly install a recording device in the conference room, the same room with my old desk and the champagne bucket. Fully legal, one-party consent state, and I was, after all, still a shareholder with the right to review meetings held about company assets. Then I waited. Tom texted me updates in code. The printers jammed again, meant a meeting was happening. My phone buzzed against my hip at 11:14 on a Wednesday morning while I sat in a diner 2 blocks away, stirring a coffee I didn't drink, watching the seconds tick by on my phone screen like a countdown. The final probate hearing was set for a Tuesday in June, but 3 nights before it, Madison threw a dinner. A celebration, she called it, at the same restaurant where she'd gotten engaged, with my extended family there, my sister, my nephews, even a few of my oldest employees invited to toast the transition. She stood at the head of the table in a champagne-colored dress, tapped her glass with a fork, and smiled at me with a tenderness so convincing that if I hadn't heard the break room recording, it might have broken my heart clean in half. To my mother, she said, who built something beautiful, and who I know, in her heart, would want it protected, even from herself. A few people laughed softly, kindly, thinking it was affection. Derek raised his glass and added, loud enough for the whole table, to knowing when it's time to let the next generation take the wheel. I set my cane against the table. I stood up slowly, the way I'd practiced for weeks, and then, for the first time in this whole ordeal, I let my spine go straight. I have something to add to the toast, I said, and my voice did not rise. It never needed to. On March 4th, $180,000 left Voss Facility Solutions for a shell company called Belhaven Strategic Partners, whose sole officer is the man sitting to my daughter's right. That money is sitting in a joint brokerage account opened 6 weeks after they started dating. The table went silent. Madison's smile stayed fixed, frozen, a mask that hadn't caught up to what her face wanted to do. On April 19th, my daughter told her fiancé, in the break room of my own building, that the company, quote, was never really hers to begin with. I have that recording. I have it time-stamped, and I have it in the hands of my attorney, along with the forensic accounting report on Belhaven, and a sworn statement from a home health aide confirming there is no medical basis whatsoever for the incompetency petition filed against me 3 weeks ago. Derek's glass was still raised, frozen midair, champagne catching the light. I also left a memo in my desk drawer last week, I said, about a new will, leaving the rest of the company to Derek's foundation. That memo was fake. I wrote it myself, to see who would go looking for it. Detective Ramos, whenever you're ready. The side door of the private dining room opened, and a man in plain clothes stepped in, flashing a badge toward Madison and Derek, calm as anything, like he'd been waiting in the hallway the whole time, because he had. I reached into my purse, took out the original guardianship petition Madison had filed against me, and I tore it once, cleanly, down the middle, the sound of it sharp in that silent room, and set the two halves gently beside the champagne bucket. I built this company with a mop bucket that didn't have wheels, I said. I know exactly what I'm capable of. The only person in this room who's been confused is the one who thought love was a weakness she could bill against. I picked up my cane, more out of habit than need, and I walked out. Within 6 weeks, the consequences arrived in the flat, procedural language of official letters. Derek Wren was charged with wire fraud and conspiracy to commit financial exploitation of an elder. Belhaven Strategic Partners was dissolved by court order and its remaining $94,000 in assets frozen and returned to Voss Facility Solutions. Madison's incompetency petition was dismissed with prejudice. The same judge who'd once whispered it's him, recognizing Derek from a prior fraud case in another county, a fact that would later come out in full, ordered her 60% ownership stake placed into receivership pending a full audit, and recommended she face her own charges of elder financial exploitation and conspiracy. Her engagement ended within the week. Her name, and Derek's, appeared in a regional business journal under a headline about family firm fraud allegations. 2 of the 11 cleaning contracts she'd personally renegotiated with kickback clauses were terminated by the client companies once the audit findings became public. But I made sure the 42 employees who had nothing to do with any of it never missed a single paycheck. I personally called every crew lead, told them the company was stable, and set up a $50,000 bonus pool out of my own recovered assets as a thank you for staying steady through the chaos. Tom, who'd installed that recorder and kept the printer jammed exactly when I needed it, I made general manager with a raise and a piece of equity nobody could ever petition away from him. 8 months later, on a night when the rain was coming down sideways and the streetlights had that sick orange halo they get in a real storm, my doorbell rang. Madison stood on my porch in a coat that wasn't warm enough, no umbrella, mascara running in 2 thin gray lines. Behind her, I could see her car, not the least sedan, some borrowed thing with a cracked taillight. "Mom," she said, and her voice cracked on the word. "I have nowhere else to go. Please." I looked at her for a long moment. I thought about the champagne bucket and the break room and the word incompetent typed up in a legal filing by a lawyer she'd hired to take my life's work out from under me. "I loved you enough to give you everything I had," I said, quiet, steady, no anger left in it at all. "You have to go find out what it means to earn something back on your own. That's not me being cruel. That's me finally being honest with both of us." Then I closed the door. Gently. No slam. Just the soft, final click of a lock. My sister Carol was in the kitchen behind me, kettle already on, and she didn't ask me if I was all right. She just poured 2 cups of tea, slid one across the counter, and said, "You did good, Elle." "I know," I said, And for the first time in 2 years, I believed it. Here's what 31 years of building something from nothing taught me. Love your children with your whole heart, but never hand anyone, not even the person you raised, the keys to your own life, without keeping a copy for yourself. Trust is not the same thing as blindness, and the people most sure you'll never catch them are usually the ones you should be watching the closest. Have you ever had to protect yourself from someone who was supposed to protect you? Tell me your story in the comments. I read every single one. If this story hit home, hit like, subscribe for more, and I'll see you in the next one.